Welcome back to the Gains for Girls podcast. As always, very glad and grateful that you are here. You can check out all things Gains for Girls at OutKick.com or anywhere where you get your podcasts. Check us out at Apple or Spotify. And again, be sure to share these episodes far and wide. Today's guest is someone who I've admired for a long time, being a NASCAR indie fan. I remember being a young kid watching these with my grandfather on Sundays, the hours that they were on the TV. So this is a woman who, she's broken barriers. She's someone I've looked up to. But this past year, she really, just emerged in the political space. She was really a top surrogate for President Donald Trump leading up to the election, and certainly has been an advocate and a wonderful champion of President Trump and his cabinet picks following the election. If you haven't guessed who it is by now, of course, it is Danica Patrick. As a race car driver herself, like I said, breaking barriers, she's setting records with her on-track performance, but now with her racing career behind her, she's looking at this next chapter. She's focusing on her passions. Again, that's fitness. If you haven't seen this woman, she's like so fit and just beautiful. She was a model as well. She has a passion for wine, helping others to achieve their goals. I could go on and on and on about her accolades again on the racetrack and beyond, but we're going to get into that here. So check out this episode with Danica Patrick. Well, Danica, thank you so much for joining the Gains for Girls podcast. We were just talking, before we started recording. I briefly got to meet you at one of the inaugural balls surrounding President Trump being sworn into office, which was a very victorious feeling for both of us. But I wish I got to really spend time and just hug your neck and thank you for everything that you have done, not just over the past few months, but really how you have been the perfect role model for women over really your lifetime, certainly over your career and beyond. So I just kind of wanted to get right into it, starting with asking you about, how your life really did change over the past few months. Yeah. We saw celebrities who were endorsing Kamala Harris, speaking at her rallies, who were making millions of dollars, people like Beyonce and Cardi B, the list goes on. But
why did Oprah need to make any money? Seriously.
That's right. But it's in total contrast with you and people like you, other women especially, supporting Team Trump. You revealed you made absolutely nothing. But I mentioned your career. You risk facing cancel culture for supporting President Trump. So pretty plainly, what made you do it?
Thanks. Well, thank you. And I am really, really sad that we didn't get a chance to hug and say hello and learn more about each other in person, as opposed to afar from spectating as a consumer of sports and people that stand up for what they believe in. So I have no doubt we'll get that chance soon. But I just felt like a calling. I'd love to hear some of your perspective too, on how it all feels. Cause I feel like also for you, it's been kind of a tidal wave of just a whole change in what you do and how people see you. And, standing up for something is a powerful thing because, it's when you're in your truth. And so when you're in your truth, you're quite magnetic. And it also gains momentum really fast, because when we're doing what's meant for us, the universe just lines things up for us. And so it went really quickly for me. It was only a little over a year ago that I went to my first ever political event, which was AmFest here in Phoenix, Charlie Kirk's big event. And at that point in time, hopefully without people judging, I didn't know who Charlie was. I had never paid attention to politics, and in fact, quite specifically avoided the news and had since 2018. I just basically stopped watching the news and just watched YouTube and spiritual information and esoteric things and physics and all kinds of other interests I had, but not the news. And so after going to that event, I posted some photos of my sister and I, and it just said that I love this country, and it was a divisive comment to so many and grabbed a lot of attention, which was ridiculous. And then I finally met Tucker Carlson when he was there because he was one of the speakers. And I quickly went on his show and went to Florida the very beginning of January, right after that, because the event is late December. And then came back and Charlie reached out. And then I went on Charlie's show and I was like, well, I guess I'm in politics now. And then one of the other people that I had reached out to that was quite a pivotal character in sort of my involvement within the campaign, especially, was Tulsi Gabbard. And she spoke at AmFest back in the first time I went in the end of 2023. And I sent her a message, a DM afterwards, and just said, you know, so impressed. I'm cheering for you. And we just kind of had a little love fest for a second. And then she had her book come out for Love of Country. And so in the springtime, I interviewed her and we had just become friends. And then it really just led into her asking if I'd moderate for her and Bobby at an event. And then that kind of got into the whole political realm. And then I moderated for JD and at a rally. And then, you know, just things here and there and doing Maha things and doing events that were in town. And that led to basically campaigning with Tulsi the whole last week.
Which is, Tulsi is one of the most authentic, Tulsi and her husband, bear in mind, what an amazing couple. They are the most genuine, sincere, real people, I think, in the political sphere. And I saw you actually at her confirmation hearing. It was so cool to see like the girl gang that surrounded her. My friend Sage Steele, who is just amazing. Meghan McCain is another one of her good friends and my good friends now. I imagine that experience cheering her on at her confirmation hearing was probably like this. I mean, of course, you never could have imagined yourself there, but it was probably like this full circle moment for you.
Yeah. And again, there almost feels like there's like some more depth to it than just having just met within the last year. It feels like there's, I don't know. I feel this, I know that you're quite religious. I believe in all of it, but I would call myself a little bit more spiritual. But I feel like there's sort of this like uprising of like female camaraderie and cheering for each other again, and like this like less competitiveness and more like unification. And so I mean, it really feels like there's like almost like past life or some kind of level of depth to the relationships that are building in this sort of arena that feel deeper than just knowing each other for the last year, and or more for some, but more on a deeper level in the last year. I don't know how you feel about that, but I just feel like there's just maybe it's because I played in my sport was guys basically, and so maybe it's because I'm just like finally having this opportunity to build more of these relationships. But I don't know. I think there's a rise of like of women supporting each other again.
No doubt about that. And I totally agree with your sentiment. It does feel deeper. I don't know if it's because, of course, we have a lot in common beyond just the surface level things we enjoy. I mean, our principles and our morals. Or I don't know if it's because there's so much at stake over this past year, certainly leading up to and on November 5th. So I don't know if that was something that really drew us in. And of course, leading up to the confirmation hearings, but I totally agree with you. And to go back to your point of, you know, you never saw yourself here. I believe we have a lot of similarities there as well, from a standpoint of we were just doing what we prepared to do. Like,
what we had done our whole lives, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yes. And then suddenly, I mean, we're on stages speaking at Trump rallies. Like, what a mind-blowing, surreal, but such a rewarding experience to be a part of. You revealed in a conversation with Vice President JD Vance that you were a first-time voter for Trump. You did not vote for Trump in 2020. So what did it feel?
I didn't vote at all. I'd never voted at all.
Oh, wow. I don't know if I realized that.
I would have voted for Trump the first time as well, and the second time. And then, of course, the third time.
So compare 2020 to 2024, and I guess, and 2016 for that matter. So, I mean, what really was it that changed for you? Was some of it like the backlash you were getting, which I tend to think has an opposite desired effect? The other side, they're quick to the whole cancel culture thing, which has certainly lost its grip now. And it oftentimes, the people they want to shout down, really their platform only grows.
Yeah, I think that really what it was about, and I wonder if this is the case for a lot of people, is that it just like felt like a mad world that we were living in. And it was like I look at especially conservatives as being a lot of people that are just like, kind of let me go about my life, let me live my life, like maybe not get too involved. There's not a big activist in me whatsoever. Like, but don't piss us off, because as soon as you start taking things away from like the ability to live the life that you want to live and the way you want to live it, now you have no idea what you're dealing with. You just don't. Like the amount of integrity and truth and drive that exists within that belief in a certain life that you should be able to live, I think created such a huge momentum in this campaign, with people that were just out there like myself saying like, this is literally the vote of reason. This is just a rational vote. We need to get the world back to, the country especially, but it has an effect on the world, back to just some basics, man. Just like, how did we get so far off? Like, it had to be so surreal for you to be standing on that podium next to a dude and being like, how is this happening? This is ridiculous. So I just think this was a bunch of conservative, rational, even if you're not conservative, because there's obviously plenty of Democrats that became either independent or Republican in the process of all of this, that was very public, Tulsi included, Bobby, that, obviously came over. But it's just like, this is just about getting back to some reasonable way of living.
And what you just described is the same sentiment that I don't know what percentage of Trump voters, but I've said it from the beginning. Of course, I know there are people who turned out to the polls to embrace Donald Trump, to embrace his America First agenda, to embrace his cabinet picks. But I truly believe more so, people like you, they turned out to the polls to reject absurdity, which is exactly what the Democratic Party has become from top to bottom, at least in terms, maybe not amongst the general public, the everyday, American Democrat, but definitely in terms of elected representation, and definitely in terms of how the media, left-leaning media, is presenting and talking about these topics, such as keeping men out of women's sports, which you're passionate about. I mean, do you think this is something that you feel passionate about?
Do you think it's ironic that I'm passionate about that because I was a girl in a guy's sport?
I was going to ask you, it's which has been amazing to see what all you've accomplished in a male-dominated sport.
There are just clear biological differences between the two. I mean, all you have to do is YouTube or Google some stories of people that took transition drugs and how, different they felt taking testosterone, whether it be strength or, libido, or just like all the changes that end up happening. It's like hormones play a huge role. I mean, hormones to a large degree create your personality. And so, and they definitely drive biology. So there's just some clear differences. So when it comes to strength and pure potential there's just no question that guys are able to achieve more than women.
So you're smarter than our last president. Congratulations.
It didn't take much to some degree. And I think there was probably a point in time that he was far more, with it. But unfortunately, these last year and 4 years, really, I'm not sure there was too much of that presidency where he, was as sharp as he needed to be to run this country. And those stories only more emerged sort of late when the campaign was really fired up, is that there was a lot of stories from much earlier on in Biden's presidency that were questionable.
Yeah, they were totally concealed. And now you have people like Jake Tapper who are writing books about Biden's decline in the cover-up. When you see all these clips of him being the cover-up, really crazy stuff.
I love seeing those clips where there's like one that I saw maybe yesterday or this morning. It was like a compilation of all of the different people within the Democratic Party that just were spewing propaganda by saying he's sharp as ever. And they weren't even like he's doing great. They literally were like, he is the sharpest man in the room. We can't outpace him. He's, it's like, wow, how does that, but then again, I feel like as a person, you kind of you are one way or the other. You tell the truth or you lie. And so like for some people, I think that we're able to tell those kinds of lies. It's probably the tip of the iceberg for the amount of lies told.
And the American people are seeing it now. Unfortunately, we had to have our eyes open in the way that we did, but now we're seeing the results of their lies and us being able to decipher their lies. For example, Joy Reid's show has been canceled. It is solely because we've seen Rachel Maddow and different people blame it on racism and how MSNBC is just racist because they fired a Black woman. No, it's because, has she ever considered, it's because her viewership has tanked. It's because people don't want to watch someone who lies or is someone who is constantly race baiting or whatever it is that Joy Reid has spent her tenure doing. So we're seeing
and
it
just
now.
having anger. Like I think that's just one of the other common denominators that you tend to find on the liberal side of things is instead of like a back and forth dialogue or a rational explanation or factual information, it's just anger and pointing the finger and being mad and look, that's not a magnetic kind of a personality that's going to bring people in. There's no laughter there. Like shoot, when I think of laughter, I think of Tucker Carlson. Like people love him. Like he can say anything and then just have that giggle, you know? And so there's just with so much of the time with I feel like on the liberal side of things, there's just so much anger in there and there's no lightness. There's no laughing. There's no understanding. It's just kind of it's just sad. It's just a sad broadcast.
That's definitely what my personal experience has been, whether it's getting on college campuses, of course on social media, but I'm referring
what
to...
Is it like? What is it like? I mean, I'm very curious about, because I didn't go to college at all. I didn't even finish high school. I got my GED. I moved to England. So I have no understanding or experience for what a college campus is like. And I'm so curious because having seen obviously Charlie's fantastic clips of him going into schools and just asking the simple question, like, what is a woman? And it's just they're always quite entertaining. University and college is 99% Democratic professors, which then lead to sort of a level of indoctrination into a certain kind of ideology. So I have no idea what that's like. What is it like?
Well, of course, it would have looked very different from when you were in college, I believe.
I didn't go, so I would have had oh yeah, if I went, you mean?
Yeah,
true.
I imagine it would have looked very different, 20, 30 years ago compared to now. And I imagine it will look even different in 5 years. But I believe in 5 years, we're going to start to see this shift again back to normalcy, because what we've seen, what people like Charlie Kirk have really been able to prove, and of course what the numbers on November 5th, what they showed us about the younger demographic is we are making that shift back, both men and women. Of course, women even still typically tend to be more liberal, but the numbers are going back. And so I can tell you about my experience in college. I think things really expedited during COVID. That's when we were sent home for a few months, but when we came back to school, I was so shocked to see how our universities and our administrators and our professors were so easily able to control us and how easily we fell for it. And from that, what we saw in 2020, 2021, and then what we continue to see in 2022, I mean, you look at what happened surrounding, after October 7th and how, there was just riots on these college campuses. Universities like prestigious universities like Columbia, where professors and administrators were unwilling to dismantle these encampments. And of course, the trans rights activist community, what they were able to get away with. Again, in my own personal experience, Danica, I have been, physically assaulted and punched and held hostage on campuses for
Seriously?
hours. Oh my gosh, in San Francisco, I was literally a group of protesters, hundreds of them. I'm speaking in a room, they come in, they turn off the lights, and they ambush me, and I'm fully accosted, and I'm being pushed, I'm being shoved, again, punched in the face by these men wearing dresses. They ended up holding me in a classroom, barricading me in for, 4, almost 5 hours, demanding that if I wanted to make it back home to see my family safely again, I had to pay them money. The dean of students shows up. It's like the middle of the night, about midnight, and starts negotiating with these students how much I owed each of them to be able to leave. All the while, the police are being held for ransom with me. They're scared to do their job because they told me outright, we can't be seen as anything other than an ally to that community, or else we'll lose our jobs. And then, of course, eventually, after almost 5 hours, I get out of this room, only because police formed a diamond around me. We pushed out. But the next day, to continue to speak, all of this to speak to how progressive, I don't even like that word, because progress means, we're moving into, I would actually say regressive, to speak to how regressive these universities have become. The next day, the vice president of student affairs at the university sent out a university-wide email. So, of course, to all faculty, all staff, all professors, the entire student body. And in this email, she said, "We are so proud of our brave students for handling Riley Gaines in the manner that they did, because we know how deeply traumatic her presence is on this campus. And so here are some counseling resources for you all. Take the day off of school."
Wow. Well, God, no wonder why you have such passion for all of this, to be put into those kinds of dangerous situations. But these are not on any level rational ways of thinking. This is either driven by fear of losing something, perhaps a job, or how wildly effective propaganda and brainwashing can be. And, you see so many things nowadays with how Project Mockingbird and how, with only 3 networks back in the day, it was far easier to control the masses. And they didn't think that there would be any influence with these little podcasts here and there. But they realize now that, of course, it does have its influence, and so that's what's lost the grip on the media. But they've obviously found other ways. I mean, I think we still have to be vigilant with our social and with our consuming of things, because it's the algorithms are always driving our feed. So, but it's it's a great time in the media, because things like your show and Joe Rogan and all these other cool things where it's like, people just speaking the truth, at least from their perspective. Look, I think truth is, there's a narrow window of objective truth. There are a lot of sides to things, but for people to just be able to at least share their truth is a huge win.
You can't hide reality anymore. I think had not been for, really, I credit a lot of what we've seen in regards to free speech and the outcome, again, of the election to Elon Musk and his purchase of X, which at the time was probably a dumb purchase, but looking back, I would call it a worthy investment. But because of that, we're seeing amazing things that I think mainstream media wouldn't have showed us. Things like President Trump at Daytona, and just the crowd is roaring. Everyone is so excited and applauding, and it's so joyous. Like it really was explosive. And so what was your reaction?
Yeah, I watched it. There? I was so excited. My sister-in-law, Jamie Little, got to interview him at the end of pit road before he got in. So that was really cool. But it's, for sure it's a good community for him. I mean, NASCAR and racing, but especially NASCAR, is a very conservative group of people. So it's a very welcoming environment, and I'm sure has been very supportive of him over the last couple. Well, shoot, it's more than a decade now.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So it's a good place for him, but it also just shows too, how good it can feel when people get on the same team. And there was nothing controversial about anything that he did. It was like, love the country, support the troops that stand up for our country and fight for our country, support those who entertain the people of this country with their skill set, whether it be racing or, I was watching the Stanley Cup final. Oh no, I was watching the the Four Nations Championship in hockey. And, watching him on the phone with the coach, and he took the phone into the room with all the players, and President Trump's on the phone telling all the players good luck. So whether it's him just supporting athletes and being, the rare humans that they are, he's just so human. I think that's kind of really what I feel like has to be so prevalent in everybody's mind now, is like, you can't fake as much as he's shown you, right? Like, even when you look at the cabinet meeting today, it was more like a press conference. It wasn't really like, I don't know what work they got done. Maybe the TV left and reporters left and they had a conversation. But, there's just seems like no opportunity where he's going to get caught off guard or isn't prepared. And the only way you can do that is if you're real and if you know your stuff. Otherwise, you need to be prepped. You need to be protected. You got to be careful who you talk to and where they get after you and what they say. You don't want to get exposed. And Trump just doesn't have to do that because he gets it. He knows it. He lives it, believes it, and he's very clear on his path.
And this, he is the exact same person on camera as he is off camera. There's no facade. There is no. That's just who he is.
Yeah.
And him being a human, I thought it was so awesome at that race to see his little granddaughter there.
I know.
Right?
So
How
cute.
amazing was that?
Yeah.
Of course, he's the president of this great country, but to her, he's just granddad, and I thought that was really, really sweet and made him really human.
Yeah. Well, I think that I think you can tell a lot about the adult by the children. I think you see a lot of, you can read into a lot of the character there, and the whole family is so successful and so put together and so, just really good human beings. And so I think that should speak volumes about who he is.
And again, you compare that with the previous president, not only his children, but how, his grandkids were alienated from him. So I think that is an entirely accurate assessment.
Yeah, it's an implied contrast.
Totally. Last thing I really want to ask you about, which is I think it's the most amazing thing ever. I want to hear about your wine business and how you operate and what this looks like for you.
Oh, goodness. Well, I have a wine dinner to go to in a couple of hours. So I started a line called Somnium. It means dream in Latin. And it was really just a trip I took to Napa Valley in 2006. Just fell in love with the valley, fell in love with the process, wine, and just remember standing on a knoll in the middle of Napa Valley with a glass of white wine at 10 a.m. thinking to myself, wow, it would be really cool to have something like this someday. And then that led to about 2 years later going and looking at a property and buying it and starting the process. So I finally had a bottle of 2014 for sale in 2017 after the idea in 2006, finally buying at the beginning of 2009 and going through the whole process. You either need a lot of money to buy something established or you need to have a lot of time and some money, just not quite as much. It is very expensive process, but it is a passion. And so I love it. Yeah. We've grown. We started off with just an estate Cabernet, and then that spread into, a Rosé and a Sauv Blanc. And now we make a Cab Franc and we make another Cabernet Sauvignon. So we have 5 different wines that come out of Somnium. And then in 2020, which was the best year to launch anything, we launched Danica Rosé, which is it's a rosé made in Provence, France. So that's the, I guess, 6th wine, but it's a separate label. So yeah, I just love wine. I just love the process. I love have you ever gone wine tasting before?
So in Kentucky, where I went to school, we have a lot of bourbon tasting.
That's right.
That's big over there. So we've done that.
Yeah,
but,
so you kind of get it. Like there's barrels and harvesting. Well, is there harvesting or is it more like fermenting? Do they just use grain?
Yeah, I think
so. It's a very similar process in its nature. It takes time. But, winemaking is just, you really realize with how much goes into making that bottle of wine. You're drinking so much labor. You're drinking so much love. And so, yeah, and it's a great way. I mean, at the end of the day, all of the companies that I start always have sort of like a deeper ceilingless mission, which Somnium for me is about being really present with who you're with, sharing that wine with family, with friends, making memories and connecting in that way that we all used to so easily at the dinner table, and gathered in community. Like I think that community is something that's dissipated over time, with families moving to separate parts of the country and less family members, and just like less community overall. And I think that my whole dream for Somnium is to really just let this be an anchor to creating great memories with people that you love and care about.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think that's a mission statement that majority of Americans can get behind. Actually, last thing for you, because I just thought of it and I'm curious. If you could get in a race car and drive around the track with 3 people, dead or alive, who are you picking?
Oh, well, so I'm assuming I'll be racing against them, and I can, right? I'm racing. They're not in my car, right? I'm racing against them. I'm driving.
Yeah, let's say.
Well, let's do a hybrid. Let's see. Well, because I think I'd probably want to see how I stacked up against Ayrton Senna, he's one of the greats in Formula One. Maybe get out there and door bang with Dale Earnhardt Sr. Obviously know Junior super well. I drove for him. He's a friend, and I love his wife. Amy's great. But he was known as the Intimidator. So that would be a fun person to see, what was that? What did that feel like? Would I be intimidated? Cause I have a real mean streak in me at times. And then maybe who put someone in my car. Who would I want to put in my car? I think I put Jesus in my car. I think that, in all of my spiritual practices and religious experiences, I've in connecting with the energy of Jesus, it always has felt like a homie, like just your best friend, like someone that's just super cool and on your level, but just all love. And so, yeah, I mean, there you go. That'd be my passenger.
I love that. And he's all love, and he's all truth at all times, which is, I feel like, the embodiment of our conversation. So thank you for everything that you have done, and for joining the podcast, to learn a little bit more about you outside of the political arena that you have found yourself in over the past about year now. Just very grateful for you. So thank you.
Thank you, Riley. You've, again, like I said before we got on, you were saying sweet things to me, and I'm like, look, woman, I've got 2 decades on you. You're so young. You're so articulate. You're so put together. You're such a hard worker. You probably will have, I'm going to guess in decades to come, you're going to blow yourself away with all the things that you do and where you're at. So
We'll see. And just continuing to trust God in the process. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the way to go.
That's it. Well, you rock. Thank you.
Thank you.
How can you not just love her in person too? She's like teeny tiny. She's short and she's so fit. She's beautiful. And really, like I said in my intro, she's a role model of mine. As always, we are grateful that you're here and listening and tuned in. Be sure to share these episodes, like, and subscribe. That way you get the first look of every episode every single week. You can check us out at OutKick.com. That's where you will find all things gains for girls. And we will see you guys again next week. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. The fight to save women's sports and restore common sense is far from over, and I continue the conversation every week. So make sure to catch more content over here and subscribe to OutKick so you don't miss a thing.